How do you build a high-quality sales KPI dashboard in Tableau? In this session, I'm going to show you how to build this exact dashboard. Follow along and let's go to a new sheet. Let's start by adding a new sheet. First, we're going to build our big numbers. So I have total sales, total quantity, big numbers in my dashboard. Let's name this sheet total sales. Drag the sales field onto text. Let's make this really big. Make it 24 point. And make it blue and bold. Okay. Let's set the formatting to be thousands. Let's click on the drop down on sum of sales, click format, change the numbers to display units of thousands. We only want to show 2020, so let's grab order date, put it on filters, and keep only 2020. 2020 sales was 609,000-ish. Let's duplicate that and change it to quantity. Call this total quantity. Replace sales with quantity. And we're going to leave it like that. So now I have a sales and a quantity big number. Next are going to be my line charts. So let's take a copy of sales. And I want to build a line chart by month. Year of order date is still on here because I copied it. Let's grab order date and change it to month. Bring sales up to rows, turn it into a line chart. I want a dual axis line chart for an area chart with a line chart overlay. So I'm going to hold Control down and drag sales to the right. Change this sales to an area chart. Let's change this to a dual axis by clicking the drop down and selecting dual axis. Hide this header and fill the entire screen. We can also get rid of order date. Let's call this total sales line. Duplicate that sheet and change it to quantity. Total sales quantity line. Sorry, total quantity line. And replace sales with quantity. On both sheets, I actually don't want an axis, so I'm going to right click the axis, uncheck show header. On total sales, right click the axis, uncheck show header. Next, let's work on the year over year difference on the dashboard. Let's take a copy of total sales, duplicating that sheet, and call it total sales year over year. This time I don't want to filter to only 2020. I'm going to drag the year over 2 rows so I can see it. And I'm going to change sum of sales to a table calculation. I want it to be percent difference. Click on the drop down, add a quick table calculation, and do percent difference. Let's change the formatting to be a percentage. Click OK. 2020 is plus 29%. Let's write a calculation to only show 2020's year over year by testing if year equals 2020, then true, else false, end. This is only 2020. Click apply, OK. Since we're using table calculations, we cannot add that field to the filter. So let's bring only 2020 up to rows and hide false. We're not filtering, we're just hiding it. Click on the drop down on only 2020 and uncheck show header. Do the same thing for year. Let's remove the lines by right-clicking on my number, format, and removing lines, row dividers, and column dividers. We'll work on color later. So now we have year over year of minus 16%. Again, duplicate total sales year over year. And let's call this total quantity year over year. Simply replace sales with quantity. So let's grab quantity, move it over to text, and let's change this into a table calculation for a percent difference. And we have negative 21%. Now we have all of this built. So we have this box built and then this box built. Let's bring them into a dashboard next. To add a new dashboard, I prefer a size of generic desktop. That's just my preference. I like tiled, so we're going to be using tiled view in this example. Let's start with a base. I'm going to start with a horizontal container. I'm going to bring 2 blanks into it. Then I'm going to put 2 vertical containers into that. Let's double click to highlight the first container and select distribute contents evenly. Let's add 2 blanks to my verticals. Blank, blank in that vertical, and 2 blanks in my second vertical. Remove the original blanks, and you'll see I have 4 quadrants. I like to do that as a base on my dashboard. The total sales and total quantity are in the top left quadrant here. So I'm going to bring in a vertical container first, holding shift to make it floating. Let's change the color so we can see it. Make it gray. I want a title, and then my big number, and then a line chart. Let's just bring in a title. Make it 24 point. We're going to call this total sales. Make it bold and center. Click OK. Let's add in my total sales sheet and my total sales line. It's a little bit hard to see, but let's remove the titles and remove this title. I'm going to change this one here to be white. And we're actually going to change everything else to be white. Now the 609 is supposed to have the year over year next to it. So let's add a container. I'm going to drag a horizontal container floating. Let's just make it a different color so I can see it. And I want to put total sales year over year and my total sales. Let's double click the handle to grab the entire thing and move it back into my container. You'll notice that I can move things around as floating and then as tiled. If you want to change anything from floating to tiled, hold the shift key down. So I'm holding the shift key down so I can drag it into my container. I want to fill evenly, so click the drop down, fill it evenly, and remove titles. Let's click on this sheet, the year over year, and fit entire view. Do the same with total sales. I have to manually change the size here, and I have a total sales band. I can remove the axis here by unchecking show header. Let's go ahead and add a horizontal container to the top here. I'm going to add 2 blanks into it. A little difficult to get the second one in. And clear my blank on top. Let's double click the container and uncheck and distribute contents evenly. So all I did here was split this top container into 2. so I can put my total sales into that container. Again, double click on the total sales container so you're on the horizontal that it lives in. Click the drop down and distribute contents evenly. Now I can remove my blank and I have a total sales area. I'm going to do the exact same thing with quantity. Now that I have total quantity in the dashboard, I'm going to clean it up. I want the dashboard to look like this. So you'll see that I have a total sales header with no padding in between and all white space around my 3 objects here. In Tableau, let's make sure total sales has a background of gray. Let's make it dark gray, that's fine. Let's make sure total sales is white and we have no padding. On these ones, the only reason that you can see the gray behind is because there's padding. So I'm going to remove the padding from all of them, including the containers. So if I double click here, there's a container that this lives in. Change the padding to 0. Let's do the same thing. Change the padding to 0 on the line chart. Let's add a background by double clicking everything. So double click on the line chart, double click on quantity, double click to get this container, double click again, and we have the outside container. Let's make this gray. I like to use more colors, pick screen color, and pick this background. Now the background is gray. Let's clean up the total sales line chart by getting rid of grid lines. Double click the entire thing, and I like to add a lot of padding and a border. Let's just start with 16. 16 padding, and I'm going to add a border. We also have one more line in the line chart to get rid of. Let's format and get rid of the row divider so it's completely clear. I want a little bit of padding underneath the line chart, so I'm going to grab a blank and put it there. Make it white, 0 padding, and white. Make it a little smaller. I also like to add padding to just about everything. Inner padding, I'm going to add 10 inner padding to my line chart. And you see I have more lines that I didn't know about. Let's format and get rid of my column dividers as well. Let's add padding to this. Let's do a 10. Just brings it away from the edge. You remember from the beginning I had colored this box so I could see it. Let's double click until I get to that box and remove, make it white. This band for the number is supposed to be left, and this is supposed to be smaller and right. So let's go into the 609,000 total sales. Go to text, make sure it's left aligned. Go back to my dashboard. I'm going to do the opposite on my year over year. Go into my year over year sheet, change the text to be a little bit smaller. Let's say 12. After it, it says year over year. Click apply, okay? And make sure it's aligned to the right. Things are starting to take shape here. Couple other little things. I need to change this to include currency. So that's format, numbers, change it to currency standard, currency custom with the display unit of thousands. Looks a little bit better. We need a little bit more space. Let's double click on the sales so I get the container. Let's not distribute contents evenly. Let's just slide this over. So this number is bigger, this number is smaller. And do the same thing for total quantity. Now that I have quantity set, I want to do a couple things on formatting. You'll remember that I used 16-point padding. I double click onto this container. I have everything set to 16. I like 16 to be around the entire box. So you'll see that this has 16 and quantity is 16. Let's change the left of total quantity to be 8 padding and the right of total sales to be 8 padding. Looks a little better that way. The other thing I like to do here is make sure everything is exactly even. So if I click on total sales, I can see the layout. See, the height is 44. We can edit that. Let's make it something even by editing height and set it to 45. Total quantity should be set exactly the same. So let's set the height to be 45. That just keeps everything even. Check this container and you can see that the height is 71. Let's change it to 70. And do the same thing on my second container. Set the height to 70. Make sure I got that right. I think it was 70. Yeah. Set the height on this one to 195. And let's set this to 195. Now we can remove the pin on that one. So now my two charts should be exactly the same, and I have some good big numbers. Next, let's build the sales and quantity comparison, this bar and line chart. Add a new sheet. Let's call this bar and line. I'm going to start by double clicking sales and bringing quantity to the right of sales on rows. Let's add date on columns. Change it to month. Not that kind of month. I want a discrete month. Just the month, no year. Make sure year is set to only 2020. And change the first sales to a bar chart. And keep the second one as a line. Let's remove order date. Click on the second pill, quantity, and set dual axis. Let's change quantity to be a light blue and sales to be a dark blue. Apply. Okay. And we have a bar with a line overlay. Let's navigate back to the dashboard and incorporate my bar chart. Click on dashboard, bring my bar and line chart into this container, and remove my blank, my placeholder. I don't want a title. I don't want any lines, so let's format and get rid of grid lines, row dividers, and column dividers. I also don't want the title of each month. Let's add padding to this as well. Change my outer padding to 0 and inner padding should be 10. Let's add a container. Let's add a vertical. Remember, we want a title here. I can actually copy sales, so I'm just going to Control C, Control V, and drag that into my container. Put the bar chart in the total sales container. Make sure total sales has no padding. And this entire box should be colored white. Let's take the entire box and do 16 padding. Just like before, I have 16 on top and I've doubled it. So I've got 32 padding between these two. So I actually only want the top padding to be 8. And that means on each of these boxes, I need to take the padding on the bottom down to 8. Now it's a little bit more uniform. Let's double click this box. I like to have a border. I also want these big numbers to be a little bit higher, so let's double click to get to the outer container. Click the drop down, and let's not distributed contents evenly. And let's manually set this to be here. Looks pretty good. On the total, this changes to total sales and quantity by month. Click OK. One thing I want to change here is the color. So I have this line as a light blue. I want to change everything up here in total quantity to be light blue. A good way to take a color from one chart and apply it into another one is to copy the color. So I'm going to go into this sheet, double click on quantity in the color, and double click on this color. I can copy this HTML string, click OK. OK again. Now I can use that copied value. Go back to my dashboard and change all of the colors here in quantity. So let's change this text to be the HTML color that I copied, and do the rest as well. That just makes my dashboard pop a little bit better. The next section is going to be the map, sales and quantity geography. Start by adding a new sheet. Just call it map. Map 1. We want states, cities. Duplicate the latitude pill by holding Control down and duplicating it. On the first latitude, let's remove city and color it by sales. On the second latitude pill, let's color city by quantity. You can also put quantity onto size. Let's change the color of quantity to match that blue color that we used earlier. Edit colors and set that HTML color. Right? Now I can turn this into a dual axis chart, clicking the drop down and selecting dual axis. Let's make it a little bit bigger on the second pill. And let's add a border. So you can see the fields pop. Go back to your dashboard. I'm going to put the map on the bottom. Do a very similar thing here that we did with total sales and quantity. I'm just removing containers that I don't want. Remove the blank. Let's put the map inside a vertical. I have a vertical. Let's put the map in. Take a copy of that header and put it inside here. Remove the title. Remove padding. Remove padding from this as well. Double click. Set the outer padding to 16. Of course, we're going to want left to be 8 and top is going to be 8 as well. Add a border. And let's add a little bit of padding to the map as well. 10 points. Make sure the outside is white. And slide this up. Again, we're going to copy the exact dimensions. Height is 504. Let's edit that to be 500. And let's take this total sales. Make sure we set the height to be 500. Mix them even. Let's even things out a little bit. Double click total quantity and make sure the right is also set to 8. The last piece I'm going to build is this sales and quantity distribution. Let's start by dragging region to rows and sales to rows. I want this to be percent of total. So let's change sales to percent of total and sort highest to lowest. So show that on the label and push it to the left. Remove my header and fit entire view. We'll call this region percentage. I want to add a background to this bar at the total of west. So I want this here to be gray and this part to be gray and so on. I'm going to start by typing window max of sum of sales. Let's close that out. That computes to be the 31%. Make this gray. A light gray would be just fine. Remove the label and turn this into a dual axis. Make sure that this is synchronized by right-clicking, selecting synchronize, and make sure you change it back to a bar chart. Window max is going to be gray. And total sales can be blue. You have to change the sort by moving sales to the right to put the blue on the top. Let's remove the region. We're going to add that in a different way. Of course, let's remove all lines. Format. Get rid of grid lines and get rid of column and row headers. Well, lines. Remove the axis as well. There's one more line in here I want to get rid of. It's a 0 line. And we have our region percentage chart. Let's right click back and do the same thing for quantity. Alright, now we have the sales and quantity bar charts built. The last piece is going to be to add shapes. In order to add custom shapes, navigate to this file on your computer. It's going to be this PC, Documents, My Tableau repository, and then Shapes. You can paste in any JPEGs into one of these folders, and it becomes available as a shape. I put an east, north, south, and west image in mine. Back in Tableau, I'm going to duplicate this region. I'm going to remove a couple things to make it a shape. Let's remove my bar chart. Change it from a bar to a shape. Click on Shape, More Shapes, and navigate to the new folder. Mine is called Geo. If that folder is not there, click Reload Shapes, and it should be there. Let's click OK. I need to add region to shape as well. Click on Shape again, and now I can set my shapes. Make sure you remove measure names and the shapes will show up. We need the exact same thing for my bar chart, so let's duplicate. So I have two sets of shapes here. I can start building my view. Let's start with two containers. Build two horizontal containers, one there, one there. One of them gets that 1%, the region percentage, and a shape. Remove titles, fit entire view, remove this title, fit entire view. Let's get rid of measure names and measure values, but put in my charts first. Remove measure names, measure values, don't need them. Remove titles. Make sure region is on the left. Let's clear my header. And we have two bar charts. Those two bar charts are going to go in a vertical container, but the container will also have my title. So I just copy the title and drop it into the container. I'm going to add a horizontal container within the vertical. add 2 blanks to it, make it a little bigger so I can get to it, and put both of my bar charts with the regions inside the container. Double click until you get to the outside level and put it on top. Remove my blank, remove this blank and this blank, and let's make it a little bit bigger. If it doesn't fit the entire view, double click until you get to a pin and remove the pin. Let's do some formatting. So let's change this to be 16. Of course, left is going to be 8, bottom is going to be 8. And I want a border. Total sales has a 0. Padding, all of these are going to have 0 padding. The container should also have 0 padding. This container should also have 0 padding. And let's set this entire thing to be white. Let's add a little bit of inner padding. Set inner padding to 10. And set this inner padding to 10. Same thing with my regions. Just gives them some space. At this point, the dashboard is just about ready, and we can just set some sizes. That's a dashboard in Tableau. Hope this helps.